In the meantime, we only have one Professor Ogola, and ladies and gentlemen, please give a standing ovation to Professor Ogola as he comes.
Thank you, YS, for that very kind and flattering introduction. I was looking around to figure out who was being introduced. It didn't quite sound like me. It reminded me of what YS did say, is that when I finished internship in Mombasa, I got posted to Malindi District Hospital. It was actually a sub-district hospital. The district hospital was in Kilifi. And unlike now when we have physicians and gynecologists and then MPH guys running the hostels, that time you finished internship and you were thrown at the deep end and you were everything. You were the pathologist and the administrator. And I was hardly 25 years old. And you know that driver would come to you, they want a favor, and they call you Mzee. So look around and wonder, we are just two people here, who is this Mzee being referred to? So, to the president of the Kenya Association of Physicians, Dr. Yusuf Karim, and your entire executive, to the chair of the conference organizing committee, Dr. Felix Baraza, and your committee, colleagues, guests, ladies and gentlemen, I feel privileged to be accorded the honor of presiding over this ceremony of the 23rd Scientific Conference of the Kenya Association of Physicians and AGM. Now, I need to move this. Okay. Yes, somehow it is working. I must admit that I had some apprehensions when I was asked by my friend, colleague, and a former student, Felix, to preside over this occasion, because it's not my forte. In my 60-something years, I've never been a guest of honor. I thought that is for either people who can give you a lot of money or do favors for you because they are big politicians, or they are from the Ministry of Health, or World Health Organization, or something like that. I also thought in football there's something called being kicked upstairs. If you've been a coach for a long time and you're no longer performing too well, but you're a nice guy, you are not like Mourinho who gets kicked out. What they do is they give you a chair in the board, so you're no longer coaching, so you can sit somewhere. So I thought these guys maybe thought, this guy's hair has become too gray. All he can talk about is the politics of medicine and all the science of medicine. Well, I was appropriately reassured on reflection. I thought it was probably not such a bad idea, and that it was a good idea to have a tete-a-tete with colleagues and engage in some honest self-reflection and devoid of political correctness. As those of you who know me, I'm usually not politically correct. Fine, now, this thing is moving too fast. I wish I had somebody to... Yes, just go up a little. Let's go up a little. Okay, so I'll start a little bit of history. The pioneer internal medicine specialists, or physicians as we call ourselves in this country, were all trained abroad, predominantly in the UK. So everyone had an MRCP of somewhere, MRCP London, MRCP Edinburgh, Glasgow, Ireland, whatever. The first indigenous Kenyan physician was the late Professor Hilary Odhiambo. Professor Odhiambo graduated from Makerere University in 1957. He subsequently went to the UK and got his MRCP in 1963. That is the year that Kenya got independent. Professor Odhiambo, as the older ones here will remember, was an extremely charismatic and flamboyant character. He also happened to be a cardiologist. And he inspired many of us who are his students to excel in academia. He was followed by several distinguished physicians, including the late Eric Mungola, Dr. Kahugu, Mwinzi, Tom Ogada, Joe Alwach, Bill Lore, Joe Kanga, Y.S. Karim, etc., etc. It became obvious by the beginning of the 70s that relying on overseas training to develop this kind of much needed specialists was untenable. The University of Nairobi Medical School had been started around 1967. And that is when it split from the University of East Africa that, the earlier gentlemen and the few ladies like Joe and Watch were trained in Makerere. So, in the beginning of the 70s, it was necessary to begin a local training program. So the local training program was begun via the M.Med program in the University of Nairobi in the early 70s. The first two trainees in this program are distinguished colleagues of ours, Dr. Majid Washo and Professor Mohammed Abdallah, whom I think is in the audience. Prof, are you around? I saw him taking breakfast in the morning. So this gentleman started the M.Med program in 1973 and finished in 1976. So those were the two first trained physicians locally. Somebody should teach Dr. Lord how to silence. So, currently, the University of Nairobi trains about 20 or so internists a year, and with a further contribution of about 5 or so from Moi University and the Aga Khan University. The number of physicians registered by the Medical Practitioners Board, I'm told, is in excess of 100. And I'm told that the number of registered members of the Kenya Association of Physicians is about 300. So clearly, this training program has been a success in meeting our country's manpower needs. However, like all things, time catches up. And in my opinion, it is clearly time to reevaluate our training model. And I'll address this a little bit more later in the presentation. Concerning the Kenya Association of Physicians, our organization, the predecessor organization was called the Association of Physicians of East and Central Africa, the acronym being APECA, quite a mouthful. It was not just an association of internists, but it also included pediatricians and pathologists. I remember fondly my first APECA meeting, which was in 1988 in Harare. I was junior faculty in the Department of Medicine, and we had a very dynamic chair in the form of Professor GBA Gideon Okelo. And he made sure that all of us who were junior faculty, and that included Elio Gutu and Nicholas Abinya and Ivan Jenga, that we had a paper to present in Harare. So we were all shipped to Harare to go and present. It was an exciting experience, interacting with the likes of Joe Alwatch and all that, and having our first feel of a scientific presentation. The Department of Medicine was so represented in that conference that we even carried one of our secretaries. For the older guys here, Paula, you will remember this. You remember we had a secretary called Winnie? Yes, she was in Harare also representing the secretaries. And the one thing that I can't forget is what a beautiful city Harare was at that time. Much, much more beautiful than Nairobi. When I went back to Harare 10 years after that, it had changed. That is what politics does to Africa. I'm not quite sure if there was a meeting in between, but soon after that, I went for my fellowship. And the next APECA meeting that I attended was in Nairobi in 1991 at the Silver Springs Hotel. Gerald Younger would remember that because he presented his M.Med dissertation results, which had supervised in that meeting. That turned out to be the last APECA meeting. Because of the prevailing political, socioeconomic circumstances, and specifically the communication constraints in this wide geographic area. It was Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, blah, blah, blah. Continuing in the APECA model again was difficult. So it was at this point that my seniors then mooted the idea of the formation of the Kenya Association of Physicians. So the Kenya Association of Physicians was formed in 1992, and as you've been told already, none other than Joel Watch was the inaugural chairman. And he was succeeded by Bill Lorre, another icon of our specialty in this country. So here we are, 27 years down the line, quite a vibrant organization. Looking at this audience here, I really must thank the organizers of this meeting. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to attend the last two KAP meetings because, as you've been told, I'm an official of the American College of Cardiology, and the dates have tended to clash. But really, this is the best KAP meeting that I've attended. So, 27 years down the line, a few guys here sitting who are now active members were barely out of the womb at its inception, and they have come to be adults and active members. So, that is the history, and I think it is a beautiful history. And we should hand any organism that purely wallows on past glory inevitably withers and dies. The environment in which we practice is in a state of constant flux, constantly changing. To remain relevant, we must not only be responsive to and adapt to that change, we should in fact be the architect of that change. We should be in the forefront of creating the future. And herein lies the challenge that we must respond to. There are clearly many challenges, and I will not purport to exhaust them in this brief speech. I will attempt to address a few of those challenges as I see them in the rest of this speech, and my disclosure is that I've got no magic answers. Maybe what I'll present to you are simply reflections. I want to start by saying that we are gathered here as physicians, as specialists in internal medicine, in a meeting of physicians. And that's what holds us together in this organization. It's therefore easy to look inwards and confine our attention to issues that affect the specialty of internal medicine specifically. In my view, that would be narrow-minded, and I would label it as being reductionist. Tunnel vision, as our neurology colleagues would say. By virtue of our knowledge, experience, and stature, we are not just physicians. We are leaders in healthcare. And in my opinion, that is a role we must embrace. And in my opinion, again, is a role that we don't embrace robustly enough. We often think of ourselves as the clinician sitting behind a desk with the patient at the other end and do not adequately look at the circumstances surrounding us that not only influence the broader health environment, but in fact, what we can do for the individual patient. So, some of the issues that I'll touch on here may be specific to our challenges as physicians, but many of them will go beyond the confines of internal medicine as a specialty. Now, one of the biggest challenges of our time in this country is devolution. I personally believe that devolution is a good thing. I believe that devolution has made the mwananchi in mashinani access services that were mere dreams in a centralized system. However, like everything else, like everything in life, there are challenges. Some of these challenges may be inherent in the devolution process per se, but I believe that most of the challenges we are seeing are due to faulty implementation. Challenges of healthcare in devolution itself are many. I probably just want to address one, and that is human resource management for healthcare in devolution. And one way in which this has manifested, which I feel passionate about being a teacher, is the chaos that surrounds sponsorship for postgraduate training because of the, if you like, misplaced priorities of the devolved units. It is my strong belief that human resource management in healthcare should be centralized. For example, by the creation of a health service commission, as has been suggested by many other people. These are political processes, and we have to play politics to succeed. If all the political noise we've been hearing is anything to go by, a constitutional referendum is inevitable in this country in the near future. This offers a unique opportunity to the medical community. Last time when we met, by we I mean as a country, made that constitution that was promulgated in 2010, we, the medical fraternity, as often happens, went into deep slumber and inevitably got eroded. Compared to, for example, the teaching fraternity, which are immensely much more politically astute than we have been so far. These changes are not going to be easy. As human beings, once we are given control, it is not easy to cede control. So the devolved units are going to fight to retain what they have. So it is not going to be an easy battle. But good things don't come easy. So if we think it is important, we have to be ready to fight for it. The next challenge that I think we as the specialist community, the general medical community need to address is specialist training. The university-based M-Med model has served us well, and most of us sitting here, save YS and Joe, are products of that process. However, my humble opinion is that it is outlived this time. It is expensive, it is disruptive of family life. We trained you, posted you to Kitale, and you got a beautiful girl there, married, got some kids, they started going to school, and now because you want get an ML in whatever, we have to take you to Nairobi, and you start a whole process. And it's not just that it's the inconvenience to the individual. There simply aren't enough spaces in the teaching hostels as we have them in this country. One, to accommodate the needs of all the young doctors who desire specialist training, nor indeed to satisfy the needs of our society for specialists. As we all know, the whole world. Specialist training in medicine is college-based, and that really is where to go. Fortunately, as again many of us are aware, there is a process going on of establishing college-based specialist training. We know of the KAP initiative. But there again, that's the good part. The difficult part is challenge. It means that we'll be having training centers distributed hopefully across the country. It means that many of us who are sitting here who do not hold academic posts will be responsible for the training of these young men and women on whom the health of our nation, of our society depends. And that is not an easy thing. So the challenges of, I'll use the term devolution in a positive context now, of evolving specialist training without compromising the quality of the training. And especially because, fortunately in my opinion, KAP has decided to retain a research project as part of the training process. And it means that all of us who will volunteer, probably fight to be trainers for KAP, must be willing to have the sacrifice to supervise these young men and women. The third challenge that I would want to add, which I think we need to think about, is about quality again, but in this context, in terms of quality of healthcare delivery as measured by patient outcomes. The whole reason we are into health practice is to improve patient outcomes. We have an expanding population, we have expansion of health facilities, and we live in a liberalized market. There's nothing in this country that stops BAT or East African breweries investing in a health institution. It is a liberalized market. And many investments in health institutions is not for healthcare, it is for business, which is okay. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. So I think that in that environment, the maintenance of quality then becomes important. And then it behoves us as the leaders in the healthcare process to make sure that we have the mechanisms to sustain that quality. And the only way that you can ensure that quality is maintained is by having metrics that are objective, that are measurable, that we can say that yes, Kenyatta National Hospital or Jaramogi Oginga, whatever it has, but quite a long name, has. This, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we have to do because we live in an increasingly enlightened world, and if we don't do it, there's no shortage of other bodies waiting in the wings to do it for us, including bodies like civil society, or even worse, ambulance chasing lawyers. Obviously, I won't end without touching on research. Research, in my opinion, and I readily admit that I'm biased, is part and parcel of quality healthcare and its improvement. Research does not need to be exotic. It does not need to be done in ivory towers. Our day-to-day clinical experiences offers a rich source of data. And it is my hope, especially with this, young men, very many young men getting into medicine, that these are opportunities that we can exploit so that we inform our decisions. We know the uniqueness of our disease patterns. We know the difficulties in applying knowledge that is there in the guidelines in our unique circumstances. And it is important that we all richly engage and embrace research. And when you start small, things were in the non-communicable diseases world after about 10 years ago, getting an international grant to do a non-communicable disease research in Africa was practically non-existent. Things have changed. As you've just been told, we've just had a paper published in the New England Journal of Medicine last week. As we are going on now, again, me and Felix Baraza are involved in an international randomized double-blind controlled trial of rivaroxaban in valvular atrial fibrillation. Somebody asked that question. And it means that you did those small things that could only be published nowhere else except in your village journal, but somebody gets to notice it. So I would exhort our young generation to embrace research. In concluding, I don't want to focus too much on universal health coverage. It is an important topic. It's also an emotive topic, very politically loaded. Governments globally fall or rise on the basis of healthcare financing. My only exhortation to this group is that we as the health community must be part of the process. We must force ourselves onto the table. Otherwise, as the cliche goes, if you are not on the table, you are on the menu. We are the ones that deliver healthcare, but much more important than being the ones who deliver healthcare, as physicians, one of our central roles is as patient advocates. And nobody can advocate for the rights of a patient better than us, and that is why we have to be at the table. I noticed that the theme of this conference was bridging the gap, private-public partnership. Intuition told me that my friend Paul Ayuo was going to do a very good job about it. So I opted not to say anything about it and to listen and learn, and I must say that I learned a lot from what Professor Ayuo talked about. The only thing that I didn't quite understand about his talk was when he said his stick was infected. So dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for having the patience to listen to my reflections, which are probably a little self-indulgent, but I suppose as the chief guest I'm allowed that. It is now my pleasure to declare that 23rd Kenya Association of Physicians Scientific Congress and AGM officially open. Thank you very much.